Cody Payne says he and 49-year-old Jamie Lee Pruitt had an argument. Days later, they agreed to meet to handle the unfinished paperwork. But Payne says Pruitt brought a gun to that meeting.
Pruitt is in the Lubbock County Detention Center on a $15 million bond now. He's charged with shooting Payne and 3 others. One victim has since died.
KCBD News Channel 11's investigative reporter Shaley Sanders spoke with Payne, who says he had called police about Pruitt before.
He comes out of the car, turned around, pointed the gun, and pulled the trigger. And I stood there shocked for a second, thinking that I was about to die. The first shot he took was pointed at my face. I felt gunpowder pepper the side of my face and don't understand how I didn't get hit. He pulls the gun back to him and looks at it like he was shocked that he didn't hit me either, and then points it at me a second time. And it went through my arm and clipped the corner of my back. I turned and went around behind the gas pumps and tried keeping everything I could between me and him as I ran up to the building, just yelling out as loud as I could, call 911, he shot me. I turned back and look, and he's getting in his car driving off casual like he just got done pumping gas.
Cody Payne told law enforcement 49-year-old Jamie Lee Pruitt pulled the trigger.
Tell me how you know Jamie Pruitt.
5 months ago, I had a truck up on Facebook for sale that had been wrecked. He reached out. He ended up buying it from me.
That one deal turned into several more.
I offered him the truck with the blown motor if he would fix my other truck. And like a week later, I had made another deal with him on some motorcycles and took those over there.
Payne says Pruitt even hired him to work at his vehicle repair shop, but the relationship soured, and Payne says he left after about 2 months. And while he was no longer at the shop, his vehicles were.
It was like about 4 months now that he had 2 trucks and 3 motorcycles and hadn't touched any of them. So one day he calls me up and tells me that the bikes are ready. And as soon as I show up, he's telling me that, oh, well, something else come up. We found something else, and the bikes are not ready yet. And so I started asking questions, asked about my truck. Like, you've had my truck here 4 months now, and you told me it'd be done in 3 weeks. That's where he threatened to kill me if I ever come trying to rush him or tell him how to do his job again.
Payne left, but days later, he asked the Lubbock Police Department to send officers to meet him at Pruitt's shop.
At first, they're telling me it's a civil matter. They can't make him give me nothing back.
But Pruitt agreed to return the vehicles, so the officers left. But the problems didn't.
The tires on my truck are stabbed. The keys for the motorcycles, all the keys, he broke them all off, snapped the handlebars on one of the bikes. He told me, get a lawyer, you effed up calling the cops. I call the police back out, and they're telling me again they couldn't make him do nothing. I said, all right, well, then I want to go ahead and press charges on him for property damage, and I want to press charges on him for threatening to kill me.
This is a copy of Payne's police report filed on March 7th.
The next 2 days, back to back, I called up to LPD, telling them the situation again about him taking my stuff, him damaging my stuff, him threatening to kill me, like anything. Well, y'all go talk to him about anything. And I just kept getting the same answer. It's a civil matter. It's a process. Nothing we can do right now. Somebody will get to it.
6 days later, on March 13th, Payne says his 11-year-old daughter noticed Pruitt outside their home. Payne says he rushed home, but by the time he got there, Pruitt was already gone.
I reached out and messaged him that we needed to sit down and talk one-on-one and come to an agreement on all this. He's agreeing absolutely and is apologizing for everything going on and tells me that he'll give me the title for the trailer and give me my truck back.
Payne says they agreed to meet in Slayton at this convenience store.
When you're sitting there at the Allsups, you think that you guys are going to iron things out. He seemed very calm on the phone. You think that you're going to get the title, and then you see the gun. I mean, did you even have time to think when he pulled that gun out?
No hesitation, no time, no remorse. The look on his face, I won't forget. Like he just had this look of rage and hate in his face as he looked at me and pulled the trigger.
We sat down with Captain Leith McClure with the Lubbock Police Department to learn more about what happened after Payne filed this report on March 7th.
The case went straight to the person scrums units. So the sergeant since we had several cases on this individual, the sergeant himself contacted the person on 3 different separate occasions, left voicemails, and we never received a phone call back from him.
We asked McClure when the sergeant called Payne about the report.
On the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th.
Payne was shot on March 13th, one day before LPD's phone call.
This could have been avoided, and somebody needs to be held accountable for it.
This warehouse looks identical to the others on the block, and the neighbors aren't too nosy. So why is this building wrapped in security cameras? We counted 14 in total. The warehouse once housed Richland Entertainment, a game room that operated 24 hours a day. Florencio says he and his mother enjoyed gambling together, and on Monday, March 13th, she suggested they try their luck here.
It was on the way home, and she said, come on, Mila, let's stop at this one.
Florencio says she didn't have to twist his arm.
I've been to that game room several times. I knew the staff members there pretty well.
Florencio says he won and called for an employee, Chris Rios, to redeem his winnings.
He just kind of gave me the thumbs up, and he'd be there in just a second.
But Chris never made it to Florencio.
The door opened, and I heard a loud pop.
Florencio says he turned and saw Chris on the ground.
I was trying to run to my mother. I stood up, and everything locked up, and I hit the floor.
Florencio says he heard his mother yelling for him, but when he tried to answer, his voice was only a whisper. His mother was in pain too.
She shattered her kneecap falling, so she crawled over to where I was at and was trying to figure out what happened. And I told her that I'm not okay, I got shot.
Florencio says he started to lose feeling as his mother screamed for help.
At this time, the game room owner had told us, ran in there and told us to get out, and they locked the doors. And my mom was screaming that, you know, how are the paramedics going to get inside and whatnot. So they left.
Florencio says he remembers sheriff's deputies running in, and he remembers that ambulance ride to the hospital where he learned the bullet was lodged in his neck.
Found out they couldn't remove the bullet without causing more damage.
Florencio says they weren't sure he would survive.
Got a trach put in, a feeding tube put in.
But Florencio beat the odds and graduated to Trust Point Rehabilitation Hospital, where he's learning to navigate life as a quadriplegic.
He had a very catastrophic injury, and it's probably, you know, being in rehab, we see all the terrible things that happen to people, and he's got the worst thing that ever happens to people.
Dr. Roger Walcott is the medical director here and says secondary complications from this type of injury can be deadly.
His autonomic nervous system that can control his blood pressure can go out of whack, and it can go crazy, and it can clamp down all his arteries and make his blood pressure go up to like 300 over whatever and put him in jeopardy for a stroke.
Florencio has been dealt a bad hand before. In 2017, he passed out while driving. Doctors discovered a spinal infection.
They gave me a 50-50 shot of walking again and a 50-50 shot of making it through the surgery.
Florencio says his progress during recovery left his doctor surprised.
But when I walked into his office, he just was in amazement. He said, I didn't think you were, you know, going to be walking again.
Florencio hasn't lost that determination.
And I've never seen anybody with his kind of injury that has gotten so excited from the gains that he's had already.
Gains like advancing from a sip and puff wheelchair to a wheelchair that can be controlled with a joystick. Victories his parents haven't missed because they never left his side.
How thankful are you to have parents who love you so much?
How do you say it? My cup overfilleth. My parents are a true blessing.
Florencio recently learned more about the shooting and the arrest that followed.
Had you ever met him before?
No.
So just a random stranger?
If I saw a picture of him, I couldn't pick him up out of the lineup.
If you could say anything to the person who pulled the trigger that day, what would you say?
Nothing that I could see on a camera.
Florencio says when he feels that anger start to rise, he reminds himself of this.
You can't get all the blessings with all that hate and anger.
And while the shooter certainly changed his life, he didn't take it.
Everybody's got a sad story, but you can't, you can't fake this smile. I'm happy to be here.
Investigative reporter Shaley Kidwell shared Florencio's story in October, and it caught the attention of a family who just happened to have something Florencio desperately needed.
We're actually getting a car from my dad. Somebody actually donated one, and we're super excited.
An anonymous group saw our story on Florencio and donated this wheelchair-accessible van, customized by Mears Mazda Volvo.
It's outfitted a specific way. It's not just a normal van.
Florencio's mom and daughter picked it up and learned how to work all of the bells and whistles.
It's fantastic. I love it.
They came straight home to show Florencio his new ride.
Oh, I love it. It's awesome. I am truly blessed to get that, and to know that there's still good people in the world that are willing to do that for a stranger they don't even know.
Christian Rios wanted the American dream.
He was an immigrant who only wanted to better himself.
His wife Perla and his sisters Gabby and Christy tell us Christian moved from Mexico to Lubbock to give his daughters a better life.
He was the dad. He was the super dad. The best things in his life for him were always his daughters.
But a shooting at Christian's work stole more from his family than that dream.
He came to this country fleeing violence in Mexico, and violence ended up killing him here.
Perla and Christy say they were here at this Lubbock game room where Christian worked when the shooting started. Perla says she and Christian were about to leave when someone knocked on the door and asked for Abraham, who Perla believed to be one of the owners of the game room.
We actually don't even know their real names because they are always switching their names. There were 3 owners in total. 2 of them were there.
Perla says Christian turned his back to the man and pointed to where Abraham may be.
The guy waited for Christian to turn towards the back to attack him. At that moment, he pulled out the gun, and I saw how the bullet hit him. Christian was smart, and if he would have seen him, he would have been able to defend himself.
Christy says she saw it too.
Christian all of a sudden fell to the ground, and I just saw the person who did it, and I thought he was going to shoot me because I looked him straight on.
Then they say the shooter opened fire with one of those bullets hitting the man who was sitting next to Christy.
I wanted to run towards Christian, but I don't know, I was afraid.
She and Perla sought shelter in the bathroom. When the shooting finally stopped, she and Perla say they ran to Christian, who was still on the ground. Christy says they tried to get people to help them carry Christian to their truck. She says one of the owners did help, but another owner, who was armed with a gun, ran.
There were a lot of people who could have helped, but no one did. Maybe if people had helped us carry him, I wonder if we could have been faster.
Christy says she's shocked they were able to lift Christian into the truck. Perla says she drove straight to the hospital.
Those 10 minutes on the way there were the longest of my life. I was feeling very desperate that I couldn't get there fast enough, and I was losing the love of my life.
Christian didn't survive. Shot and killed by a man the family says they don't even know.
That is why I find it really difficult to have compassion towards that person.
Perla says even if the shooter were sentenced to 100 years in prison, it wouldn't be enough.
This is supposed to be a safe country, but it wasn't like that. Christian wasn't doing anything bad. He was working, so I asked for justice.
Justice for this family, Christian's daughters, American citizens, who they pray will live out the lives their father died trying to give them. Over the last several months, we have spoken with people who filed police reports against Pruitt in the days and months leading up to that deadly shooting. One man even obtained a temporary restraining order against Pruitt. We also confirmed Pruitt was on parole at the time of the shooting.
You can read more about this ongoing investigation on our website, kcbd.com. Karen and Abner.